We women have been brainwashed and conditioned to believe that you can put a man on the moon, you can be a neurosurgeon, you can be all the things in the world, but you are not smart enough to figure out what you should be eating and how you should be exercising. You need to buy someone's diet and exercise program. And you also need to ask them for permission for everything. Am I allowed to have coffee with cream in it, or is that going to break my fast? Like, it drives me crazy, these intelligent women I hear asking for permission to use their common sense.
It isn't about being perfect. It's about being better. Hello, my name is Dr. Stephanie Estima, and I host expert discussions with thought leaders in all facets of health, including nutrition, fitness, hormones, stress management, performance, recovery, longevity, health span, and energy production. On this show, we discuss complex science, but then we also alchemize it into actionable, everyday living. The ultimate goal with the show is to assist you in making informed decisions about your health and to catapult you into being the hero in your own life. Hey, friend. Lovely to see you here again. Welcome back to the Better with Dr. Stephanie podcast. It's me, your host, Dr. Stephanie Estima. And today I am joined with Chalene Johnson. We are basically two friends having a conversation about perimenopause today. Chalene, in case you have not heard of her from Turbo Jam and Turbo Fire fame, she is a New York Times bestselling author. She's a lifestyle and business expert, a motivational speaker, the founder of the Smart Life movement. The Huffington Post recognized Chalene as one of the top 50 female entrepreneurs to watch in 2017. She's a host and creator of many infomercials and a regular guest on QVC. She has sold over 10 million DVDs. I bet one of them is in your home. So on our conversation today with Chalene, we talk all things perimenopause and menopause. I start off with what her biggest challenges were when she was entering into perimenopause. And it's probably something that you have also dealt with as well. Too much cardio, too much stress, not enough sleep, too much alcohol. Maybe you are doing HRT and you are lifting the weights, but you're not seeing the results that you want. And we talk about what were some of the big aha moments for her and what she did to help correct that. We move into what we both see in our communities in terms of women not using their own intuition, brilliant, smart, beautiful women that cannot make decisions for themselves because we have been taught by the diet industry, the fitness industry, that we are not good enough, smart enough, capable enough to do it on our own. And if you listen all the way to the end to my post-show, my after-show thoughts, I'm going to give you the biggest takeaways that I had from our conversation. So once you listen to my conversation with Chalene, please stick around for my best takeaways from the show. That's my little Easter egg for you. And I would just want to say, in general, it's so refreshing to be in the presence of someone who gives like zero Fs about what people think of her. She is so authentically herself, so big and wild and outrageous and beautiful and intelligent. It was just such a pleasure to have this conversation with her. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Chalene Johnson. All right, Chalene, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I don't know too many people have a voice for radio and a face for TV, Stephanie. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, you're too kind. We can end the interview here. We're good.
Thanks for having me.
I have so much admiration for you in general. Obviously, I've followed you for years, back from the Beachbody days. So I wanted to have you on the show because you and I talk to very similar audiences. I think your story is very relatable to, certainly there's lots of perimenopausal women that didn't have, millions and millions of fitness videos that people bought from and watched, but your evolution, I think, and your relationship to exercise has been something that I myself have experienced. I was a Taibo instructor, step instructor. That's how I paid for my chiropractic school. And so I wanted to start off by talking about your evolution and your relationship to cardio and how that's sort of changed over time.
Yeah. Well, it started off probably like most people who are my age or maybe a little younger, a little older, which is that's all that we did. That's all that we knew. We watched Jane Fonda. We saw our moms wearing leg warmers and leotards. And we were just told, like, if you want to lose weight, the best thing to do is burn more calories, do more cardio. And that for me it worked. Most of the people on both sides of my family struggled with obesity and dieting. And so, I always hear women talk about their earliest memories of dieting, and mine, there was a negative association. I remember thinking, my aunts, my cousins, they all always talk about dieting and they're all obese and unhappy. So that must not work. And my mom never talked about dieting, but she did jazzercise. And I remember her physically getting, tighter and leaner and stronger. And I remember her being happier. And I remember the way people would respond when they were dancing in her class. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so for me, it was like, this is my insurance against my genetics. So I really defaulted to cardio. Wasn't my degree. It wasn't what I thought I would end up doing for a living purpose, whatever. But it was something that helped me keep my weight in check.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's so many women that can relate to that. I remember watching Tammy Lee. Do you remember Buns of Steel?
Totally.
And The Firm. And so these were like, the little step, and I had all the little VHS, I had step tapes at home and all of that. And I think so many of us, like you have described, we just were like, yeah, the way to stay slim and to be, attractive is cardio. And even though The Firm and, Tammy Lee was Buns of Steel, it was, if you go back into those videos, it's the small little weights. It's little micro pulses. It wasn't training in the way that maybe we see weightlifting and resistance training for women today, but it was, it was very like everything is light and everything is, very petite and very delicate and, and to be honest, and just for full transparency, I wore leg warmers to the gym today because I think we need to bring them back.
Love it. Yes. Very flattering.
But I think that the cardio piece is where we can get stuck in a loop, right? Because you do see, as you're describing, you do see a reduction in your frame, right? You do get small, like everything gets smaller, fat gets smaller, muscle gets smaller, like you just become a smaller version of yourself. And I think that you really put that really well, where it's an insurance policy almost against your genetics, right? I, same as you, sort of grew up with obesity on both sides, like morbid obesity on both sides of my family, and never wanted to end up that way because everything hurt all the time, making food, like walking around the house. I remember my grandmother, just always like swearing because her joints were just killing her. And so when did you discover weights?
Yeah. So the cardio story kind of evolved too, because anything that works, then when it starts to work a little less, you're like, well, I just need to do more. And you mentioned teaching Tai Bo. I really recognize, even when you just said that, I flashed to a thought in my brain, seeing those workouts on TV. At the time, I was a step instructor too, and thinking to myself, my workouts are not hard enough. They need to be more intense. And then that's exactly what happened is I started creating more intense workouts. I started believing in helping, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of my students to believe the same thing is like, if we're not crawling out the door, drenched in sweat, it wasn't an efficient workout. Like if I ever left a workout not completely like I could wring out my shirt, I was disappointed in myself, And so then as I was creating workouts at the time for health clubs, I was creating, this is, back in the late 90s, I was creating workouts for a chain of health clubs. And I was like, they've got to be more intense. And so I started creating more and more intense workouts. And eventually they were, in, hundreds of health clubs. And we were designing these workouts that needed to be higher intensity. That was the demand because that's what everybody was putting out. We're talking like, the P90X days, the Insanity days, the Tai Bo days. Mine was called Turbo Jam. Eventually that wasn't hard enough. So we came out with something called Turbo Fire, where you're doing high intensity for 45 minutes, like long endurance, high intensity. Air jacks on concrete, like repeatedly jumping and doing air jacks, just doing burpees and just crazy plyometrics for 45 minutes. But I never did that like once a week. I did it every single day, sometimes twice a day, because eventually, as the body is really very equipped to normalize things for us, homeostasis sets in and it's just not working. And so you have to do more and more and more. And I mean, we did this, I remember doing this study for a university when one of the infomercials we were testing. And you need to make a claim. We needed to make a claim on how many calories it burned. So they brought in university to do this clinical study of us. We brought in tons of different participants, hooked everybody up to monitors, and did multiple tests, etc. And, we had people who had never exercised before, people who were overweight, people who were of normal weight, normal body size, all the things. No one had a more vested interest in having it be a higher calorie burn than me, right? Like, because I want this big claim on TV. I had the second lowest calorie burn in the room, and I literally almost killed myself because it just was like, my body was like, this is all you do. Like, we have adapted. So yes, I was strength training. I've been strength training all my life, but every year, as I continued to try to learn more about strength training and lift heavier, I was doing the right things. I was a certified personal trainer. I had 19 different certifications. That's what we did back in the day. And I was doing all the things right, including progressive overload. But I wasn't fueling or resting or caring for my body in a way that allowed me to put on muscle. So it was completely catabolic.
Yeah, I think that there's so many women listening. They're like, I do the same thing. We have to white knuckle our way when something isn't working. Just like you said, if a diet stops working, or the hour on the stair mill, or doing the class isn't. So now we have to step up the intensities either in volume, so we're doing more of it, or we step up the intensity. And I think that there's something. It's interesting because I don't know that this exists in the male population. I think that there's something unique about women, and maybe it's even in our cohort. It's women. I always find we are so quick to jump to blaming ourselves, right? Like when you were getting your calories measured, it's like your body just got really good and really great at the exercise, at the stimulus that you were providing it. But because the calorie burn wasn't high, so you can make that big claim or whatever, you were like, this is the worst day of my life. It's so interesting. Like, women jump to, there's something wrong with me. Why is it not working anymore? I can do it more. I can do it longer. I can do it harder. But what is it about me? Why am I feeling broken? Do you hear that a lot in your community? And
Yes. And I've been a part of it. Being somebody who was in the consumer fitness business eventually, originally I was servicing and taking care of fitness instructors, right? In the industry. And then I sold out, as they would say, and started doing consumer videos. And very quickly I realized, just in having conversations and talking to the marketing teams and the directives I would get, that we really need to hook women so that they believe they will not be successful unless they have this one special shake or this one special workout. And you have to follow the diet perfectly. And if you didn't follow it perfectly, well, then you did it wrong.
Then it was on you, not on the program, but it was on the individual who couldn't follow it 100%.
Yeah, we women have been brainwashed and conditioned to believe that you can put a man on the moon, you can be a neurosurgeon, you can be all the things in the world, but you are not smart enough to figure out what you should be eating and how you should be exercising. You need to buy someone's diet and exercise program. And you also need to ask them for permission for everything. Am I allowed to have coffee with cream in it, or is that going to break my fast? It drives me crazy, these intelligent women I hear asking for permission to use their common sense. That is a pet peeve.
Ugh. And my heart breaks for them too. I just today, I put out a post on seed oils, and people are losing their minds. It was a comment the one glass, it was just a little meme that said, the one glass of alcohol is ruining your sleep. Yes, just the one glass. Seed oils positively contribute to body composition and human health outcomes. And literally people are losing their minds. It's that is... And what about canola oil? And what about this oil? And what about sesame oil? And what it's sesame oil? Are we really we're really not gonna consume tahini? Tahini is on the, this is what we're talking about. Can we major in the majors? And to your point, so intelligent. I get that question all the time. What breaks my fast?
Everything.
What?
Am I allowed to do this? Can I? Even when I would design workout programs, they would say, okay, you've got upper body on Wednesday and lower body on Friday. Can I swap those? It's
oh my gosh.
And I feel really bad because we've done that to her. We have conditioned her to believe you are going to mess this up. And look at your history. You always mess it up. And we're going to produce something else for you that maybe this time you won't mess it up. So it's no wonder that we drive ourselves crazy. And I follow a lot of the, people in our space who personally, I think y'all need to simmer down now and like stop making people crazy with our recommendations and also like let's apply some common sense to these practices and not have people so terrified that they're going to do something. We just don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah, and I remember really being struck by your talk at Vonda because you were saying at Vonda's event because you were saying something like this as well. You were like, "Listen, you know what to eat." You were saying something along. I'm paraphrasing, and
Yeah.
I'll let you expand on it. But it's like you know what to eat. You know you shouldn't just work out for 45 minutes and then sit for the next 16. So I love this idea of like I am going to help you now start making the decision. And you were sharing your story, and you were saying I was doing all the things. Like I was
Yes.
taking the HRT and I was, back when it wasn't like super fashionable or super really talked about. And I was lifting the weights and I was doing the turbo jam and I was doing all the things. And I still was unhappy with myself. And all I really needed to do was just like make a couple of tweaks. Like I needed to just lock it in a little bit.
Yeah.
I would love for you to expand on that and just maybe even expand on just your own intuition because you were doing all the right things, like doing the weightlifting, getting probably, the 150 minutes, 180 minutes of cardio, zone 1, zone 2, maybe zone 5, who knows, per week, right? So you were doing all the things and being on hormone therapy, which, when you were talking about this idea in perimenopause it was avant-garde at the time. It was sort of like a newer idea or still very controversial. So talk a little bit about the intuition and if there was any light bulb or anything that sort of went off in your head where you're like, I can just tighten this up like I can just do it a little bit better.
Yeah, for perimenopausal women and menopausal women, it's very frustrating. It's very confusing because, it's just like having a child or a pet or anything that you had rules and they worked. And you knew that like if you didn't follow the rules and things didn't work. But when you're following the rules and nothing's working, you are like, okay, so this is what my mom and my aunts were talking about. This is aging. And I just found myself like wanting to fight it. I also had, for me, it was like exactly at the moment that I stepped away from doing consumer fitness videos because I just knew they weren't healthy. I had my show was #1 on TV at the time. And I just, without making a public statement to the company I was working with, I just said, I have to step away. I can't do any more consumer fitness. My health is ruined. And I'm lying when I'm
because of the cardio, because of all
everything.
Of the cardio that you're putting in.
I certainly can't attribute it to any one thing, but it was the way I was living my life. I was doing everything wrong. I was afraid of food. I was eating everything as long as I knew what the macros were, which was a lot easier if it came in a little package and said exactly how much. Then that's all I ate. That's all I ate was like super high processed protein, nothing that was real. I was afraid of real food. I was afraid of not moving. I was afraid of not doing hours and hours of cardio every day. I was afraid of gaining a couple of pounds because I was told by the company I worked with that if I could get leaner each time I created a new workout, it would be more marketable. And that makes sense, I guess, from a marketing standpoint, but it didn't make sense to me from a health standpoint. So I found myself just depleted. And
where are you going to go? Like at one point, how small can you, like, where are you going to go? How many less calories are you going to eat? How many hours of cardio are you going to, you know what I mean? Like at some point you sort of reach a finite limit of your matter, you know?
Yeah, it reminded me of I don't know if you saw the movie The Substance with Demi Moore, where she's like a fitness guru who hits 50 and she still looks amazing. And they're like, but you're old now. You're done. It's a creepy, weird kind of movie. But yeah, I think you just kind of age out or you wear out. And I was wearing out. I had so many injuries. I was chronically sick, chronically tired, sleep deprived. I did a brain study at the Amen Clinic and he's like, I know who you are and I know what you do, but you're not healthy. And I was like, I'm not? And he's like, not at all. And your brain right now looks really bad. We need to do something about it. I could show you the before and after of my brain. It's remarkable. But that was like, I kind of needed to be scared straight. That's when I resigned. And I made that decision to walk away at the height of perimenopause. So now I'm stepping off of all this cardio. My hormones are out of control. So I'm like, I know what to do. I'm going to get on HRT. So I was on HRT for about, I would say, I don't know exactly, but maybe 5-6 years and just steadily gaining weight and going like, But everyone said, lift weights, do cardio, do less cardio. Okay, I'm doing less cardio. Do HRT. Okay, I'm doing HRT. Like I'm doing all the things, but I just kept putting on the weight. I was doing less cardio, but I hadn't cut back on my intensity. That was probably the biggest difference. So it got to this point where I just was tired of pretending it was okay, like fighting with myself. Like, why are you being so shallow? It's 8 pounds. It's 10 pounds. Like, get over yourself. Like, people would kill to look like it. But as a woman, when you know what you feel like when you are at your best, it's hard to show up for anything. It's just going to be real. You don't feel like going out. You don't feel like buying new clothes. You don't feel like putting yourself out there. You don't feel like going for it. You don't feel like doing anything. And then you couple that with all of the, I think we have now 66 known symptoms associated with perimenopause. So I'm having all those happening at the same time, and it's just a double whammy for your mental and physical state. And I ironically had a guest, this is about 3 years ago, on my show because I'd seen her on TikTok. And when I jumped on her TikTok, she was like, oh, I know you I used to do your workouts. And her name was Dr. Mary Claire Haver.
Huh.
And I connected with her and said, I'd love to have you on my show. It's like 3 years ago. And when I had her on my show, I was like this. Like it all was coming together.
Yeah.
So I changed the direction of my show, which used to be about a lot of other things. And it was just like, I don't care who's interested or not interested or how my show ranks. I'm going to turn this into like a full-time education. I've got this platform. I can attract the top experts to educate me. And that's what I did. And then I started troubleshooting like, okay, I'm doing all these things, but let me really pay attention to what they're saying and see where I was missing the mark.
And so where were you missing the mark?
Well, in almost every area, a little bit, And so I think that's the one message I want to share with women is there are pillars of getting back to yourself in perimenopause and menopause related to hormones. There's pillars. You can't attack them all at once because it's like running around your house and trying to clean your whole house at once. You just can't. You'll never truly get into the corners. You'll never really understand where the clutter is supposed to be put away. So for me, I went through them kind of one at a time. And the thing that I realized now in retrospect is I did them in phases. And I personally believe, there's a way, everyone has their own approach. For me, I believe you kind of need to attack the one that's going to make the biggest difference for you, because if you don't have a little bit of a win, you're like, screw it. Another whatever that doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
So for me, the very first thing that I did was change my exercise. And that was, wow, a mental shift. Like I was just like, I'm going to do this, but I know I'm going to gain 100 pounds. I'm just going to do it because everyone says, and these are the experts and they're telling me about the research, but I'm going to knock off the high intensity interval training that I'm doing every day, long bouts of intense cardio. And I'm just going to focus on zone 2 cardio, specifically walking, to see if I can't bring down my inflammatory markers, bring down my cortisol. And with, there are other changes I made too, but within a month, I started, without changing really anything else, I started losing the weight. I was like, okay, so I'm on to something. Then the next thing that I changed was my nutrition. And I'm going to share with you what I did. But as I said, I don't believe that there's one way where everybody needs to do this.
No, this is your own. This is just like Chalene is not telling you this is what you should be doing.
Yep.
This is what worked for you.
Yeah. Because all of us have a history. And my history had been food and macros and protein had become very stressful. I was a prisoner to counting my macros every day. And if there were 30 days in a month, I might feel like I might be able to say I did it perfectly. 2. So to have 28 days where you effed up again, you know what I mean? Became stressful. I hate math. Every meal became a mathematical equation. It limited the foods that I would eat because I'm like, I can't eat that because I really don't know what the macros are. So counting macros for me was a stressor. So I was like, I'm just going to use my common sense. I know I need to focus on protein first and real food. that's going to help me continue to bring my inflammatory markers down. I'm just going to sit down at every meal and eat a big portion of protein. I don't need to know how many grams it is. I don't care if it's 4 grams or 6 grams or 7 grams. Am I full? Great. Just start with protein. And then I'm going to start with eliminating all the fake foods, quote, fake clean, which is so funny, or fake highly processed proteins. And I just
started, the protein bars and things like that.
Yeah. And listen, I'm not perfect. I still do those things when I'm in a pinch. But when I started this journey, I was afraid to do that because of the math that was involved with macros. And the other thing was I had a guest on who specifically shared with me a little bit about the protein hypothesis, protein leverage hypothesis. And I'm like, that's what I'm doing. Because I was so focused on hitting my protein goals. And that was it. Like, I really didn't care about anything else. But like, I got to hit that protein goal. And there were so many days where I'd be like, I have to keep eating. I haven't hit my protein. So let me just force down this, cup of cottage cheese. Let me force down this chalky protein shake. And I was never going to get into a deficit over a period of, any length of time because I was so focused on that. It made food mathematical and I was no longer using my common sense. So that was another massive change I made. Now, if you've never looked at your macros, I encourage you to do so. But if what I've described is familiar, what harm is there in using your common sense and just making sure you have a big heaping serving of protein that you would say, this is going to satisfy me at every meal?
There's a couple things that you've said in there that I think are worth highlighting. First is the long runway. So giving yourself a lot of time. So not trying to fix everything all at once. All of the type A's that are listening, that are like, I'm going to do everything that she just said. No, you're going to choose one thing, like you were saying, major in the majors, that is going to have the biggest bang for your buck. And you're going to give yourself grace. I think that is a very, very important piece of it, especially women who are very achievement-oriented, success, oriented types, where we want to see, we want to say, here is the calculated effort that I'm going to put in, and I want to see the equivocal outcome on the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
So I love the long runway. That is beautiful. And figuring out what is the one thing that you can kind of dial in. The other thing that I wrote down as you were talking is safety. And you were saying, I have not finished I haven't reached my protein goals yet. So I am going to make sure that I eat to make sure that I'm hitting my protein targets. And one of the things that I have come to understand in my own body and the community that I speak to, the women that I speak to that are part of the community, is a woman cannot heal unless she's feeling safe. If you are constantly eating 400 calories a day, or you're, nitpicking and you're, weighing all the things, and for some people that helps. Like some people that helps them stay in whatever you do you, whatever works. But for some women, as you were describing, all of that macro counting and timesing it by 4, and okay, this one I got to times it by 9, and the glass of alcohol gets this times it by 7. All of that it's just noise. It's just pressure and noise.
Yeah.
And so I think that a woman really needs to feel safe, and eating the protein and I love the protein leverage hypothesis. We can totally geek out on that. But the idea that a woman's body feels safe is then and only then will it start to shed that fat, right? Because women's bodies will hold on to fat like it's an insurance policy. They are not letting it go unless it is safe. It is safe to do so.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment too, because, our hormones are pretty level until we hit puberty. And then it's kind of this strange thing kind of going up, but it's irregular. And then we hit our fertility years and it's pretty predictable for the most part. And then we hit this wild ride down.
Yeah.
Okay. And then suddenly we're in menopause and we're like, okay, this should be predictable again, right? Like I should now know what I need to do. But what we don't talk about is, well, progesterone's in decline and estrogen's in decline and testosterone's in decline. What's on the rise to compensate for the loss of, Beyonce, who was running the show, estrogen, is our body's like, okay, wait a second. She's done having babies, but she's still here? I guess we should keep her alive. What's the best thing that we can do to keep her alive? Well, let's put some fat storage in her midsection. Let's have cortisol and the other hormones which are responsible for us for holding on to fat, start putting on that visceral fat and kind of protecting all of our internal organs and then your body shape starts to change. The scale might not even change that much, right? Because you're slowly losing some muscle, you're, gaining some fat, and they feel and look very, very different. Even though the scale might not be that, you might be like, God, I'm only 4 pounds heavier, but like nothing fits. And why am I only wanting to wear a muumuu or a tunic? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think it's really important that we tell women, okay, your cortisol is on the rise. So that, I would say, is when you said safe, that's another truly important key measure that I think women need to look at is I was in constant fight or flight, like wired and tired, and I would wake up at the crack of dawn, 2 hours before my kids got up so I could get in extra cardio, and then I'm a mom all day and running a business, and then, I didn't do enough, so let's get on the treadmill at night, or, just like this constant go, constantly in a heightened state of cortisol. And then I discovered a study where they were looking at not professional athletes, but I believe it was student athletes, if I'm not mistaken. It was from 2004. And they were measuring the cortisol levels of these athletes who were training every single day, long endurance, high intensity. And their inflammatory markers were such that they nearly mimicked the markings of someone who has Cushing disorder or Cushing's disease.
Right.
And that, of course, for athletes, our cortisol levels eventually come down. But when you're in perimenopause and menopause, which frankly, there are very few studies looking at our species. And when I say our species, I'm like those of us who grew up in the 80s and the 90s who just killed ourselves every single day. And no, I didn't get paid to be an athlete, but like I freaking trained like I was one because I was training to fit in my jeans,
Yes. Yeah.
And what those studies don't look at is our cortisol levels eventually, once we hit perimenopause and menopause, unless we're doing things dramatically different, they stay elevated. And mine were through the roof. I had sky-high inflammatory markers, sky-high cortisol, and I knew, okay, I have to focus on all the things I can do to bring my stress down. But that bugged me because as I say that, I'm sure there are people who are like, well, the things that are stressful for me, I can't do anything about them. It's my job. It's my kids. It's my, you know what I mean? I'm a worrier. So it's like, okay, let me make a list of the things that I do have some control over and what things physically am I doing that I can help bring down my body's stress response. Like we always think stress is like, take a bath. Like, don't make me sit in my own dirty water.
Don't make me meditate.
No,
Don't make me meditate.
Make me do it right. That will stress me out. But I think we need to talk more about like what are the things physically you're doing that could reduce the stress. Not just like lifestyle, people, and jobs and stuff like that, and like meditating, but like changing my workout, walking outside. Huge change when I stopped walking on a treadmill. I started the zone 2 walking on a treadmill. And then when I shifted it to go outside, it was like the next, I track my blood and my markers. Like I'm obsessive because I'm creating my own science. I'm a project of one, if you will. And so to see like my inflammatory markers coming down just because I was outside, it made sense. It's like, okay, I'm grounding, vitamin D. When I'm in
birds chirping,
everything, like my brain is slower.
Yeah.
All the things. So I think that's a really important piece. The sleep was huge and still working on that. But it made a huge difference. And I just had to prioritize it,
I think that there's a lot of women struggle with this actually. You just touched on it. I think there's a lot of direction, even though I don't necessarily subscribe to it, around morning routines. It's like, here's the 40-step morning routine to be a millionaire. And it's like, you know what? My morning routine, when my kids were young, you know what my morning routine is? My toddler waddling into my bed to wake me up because like, and
wow.
I always felt like such a loser because I would hear all this sort of male dominated conversations like, yeah, and I make my tea that I import from wherever, and then I journal, and then I ice bath, and it's like, I got to get my kids fed, and I got to get them to school.
Dude, I just have to raise my hand and say, that was me. I was that psychopath. I was the person who's like, you need to wake up at 5 a.m. and pull out your push journal. And like, I literally created a whole business around it and how important it was to have everything done on your to-do list by 7 a.m. And I used to do these motivational camps that were called Camp Do More. Like literally everyone needs to do more. Like I know I was a big part of the problem, which is partly why I'm so freaking passionate about saying I'm so sorry And let's set the record straight. Let me explain where I was wrong and how I got caught up in all of this too. The machine, and granted, we didn't know as much then as we do now.
And like, welcome to the human race. We all make mistakes, man, and I know someone like yourself, I mean, like the high achieving type A sees the, high achieving type A in you. I totally get that. I also feel a certain amount of responsibility with the platform that I have to make sure that I'm putting out information that helps people make an informed decision. And I had put out a diet a couple of years ago just to share, on a female-centric ketogenic diet. And I still stand by it because I think that a lot of people with metabolic derangement or dysfunction or insulin insensitivity, it's a nice temporary fix. But what I didn't see coming was that women would be like, oh, I lost all this weight because I cut out carbs. Carbs are the problem. I'm never eating carbs again. Fruit is bad. Rice is bad. Sweet potatoes are bad. And I just didn't see that coming. So I also feel like I have some responsibility as well to let people, like, carbs are your friends. Carbs help with serotonin. They help with that parasympathetic that like that safety that we've kind of been talking about a little bit too. So let me say, I appreciate your transparency and your honesty and your authenticity for taking responsibility. And it's also your story, right? And sometimes we make mistakes and we fall down and we fall flat, and sometimes we just trip. But as long as you're like, hey, like, this is what I learned, like, who wants to be with a doctor that's never changed their mind? That would scare the hell out of me.
Dude.
Like, if you went to a coach, they're like, yeah, I've had the same opinions that I had in the 1980s. It's like, we have a problem.
Yeah, that's so strange now that people do that. They'll pull up like past tweets or past position. I'm like, that. I think it would be more problematic if someone is never getting new information going like, I can look at this differently.
Yeah.
It is really important. I think for me, again, I was already on HRT. I've been doing that and still gaining weight. It wasn't until I made so for me, I believe for most women to get a win, right? Like, you can do any of these in any order. And if you haven't done them, you're going to probably see some improvements. But if you're doing most of the things I'm talking about and you're not, then, okay, where do we start? And I personally like starting at the one that if we don't fix this, nothing else is going to work.
Yeah.
Which is, looking at our cortisol levels, looking at our stress, looking at how we can kind of change our mindset to realize that we don't have to destroy ourselves.
There's no bucket that you have to throw up in. It's like, you don't need the bucket.
Right. Yeah. So
it can be an enjoyable, pleasurable experience as well.
That's what I like people to do that first and just focus on that. And I'm always asked, how soon did you start to see results? And for me, immediately. Like, so within the first couple of weeks of just eliminating one of the things that was creating so much inflammation for me, which was the sleep and the high intensity, immediately a couple of pounds, which was enough to go like, okay, dang. All right. So now let me change the food. And I would say within a matter of about probably 3-4 months, I was able to drop 10% body fat and 10 pounds. And
what? 10%?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whoa, that's a lot. Mm-hmm.
And for me, a big piece of that, I was almost in disbelief, kind of like waiting for the other I'm like, wait a second, I'm not tracking anymore. I'm eating food. But I was, and I say this, and not to overhype it, but now I can eat whatever I want, but I don't go crazy. I don't have like huge portions because I'm satiated, because I start every meal with, some protein that I'm really looking forward to. I also tell people, because this is the other question I get all the time, they're like, because I don't drink, right? But when I did this, I was still drinking because I'm like, okay, I know that's elevating my inflammatory markers, but I can't give it up. Like, I need this. I need this for my stress. Like, I told myself all these things. So I just want to be completely honest and say, yeah, I lost the body fat and the weight, and I was still drinking. I later added that extra layer. Like, I was like, let me go all the way. I didn't want to do all that at once. So you just pick the things where you're like, I can't give this thing up yet. Do the other things that help to bring your numbers down, that help to bring you into balance and into check. And, we could probably do a whole episode about alcohol, but I just, I think it's important to be honest about that, because people say, well, wait, it's like, you've lost all this weight, but so you don't drink, do you? I'm like, well, no, I don't, but I lost it while I was still enjoying champagne.
Yeah. The other thing that came to mind as you were talking is when you started with the thing with decreasing the intensity, let's say, of the cardio. And I also will say, in the spirit of transparency, I always will joke like my toxic trait is making a zone 2 bike ride into a zone 5 bike ride. So I still also have to be like, okay, girl,
Yeah,
let's just like
simmer.
take it
Right,
easy. You
right,
don't
right.
have to, simmer down.
Totally.
But it's focusing on the one thing that's going to really measurably move the needle for you, I think opens up capacity. It allows for more capacity for you to look at some of the other levers in your life that maybe you want to modify a little bit.
Mhm.
Like maybe where you were before with the intense cardio and the weight training and all of that, you just didn't have the capacity to look at your food and say, okay, listen, like I'm just going to eat whole food. I'm just going to stick with the packaged food right now because that's all I can handle.
That's right.
But as you open up a little bit, you
Yes.
expand a little bit, that capacity also for change and desire to change and energy to change also appears as well.
That's such a good point. It's a really good point. And I think it really needs to be emphasized because you're right. Like there's so many things I couldn't have changed in the beginning. And I think that's why so many women they feel defeated,
Yeah.
right? Because they try to do too much at once.
Yeah. I know we could probably do an entire podcast on alcohol, but tell me what you changed. So when you lost the 10% body fat and lost the weight, still drinking, what incited the change for you to say, okay, now this is like the next level for me. Like this is the next sort of evolution in my health.
This is embarrassing, but it's the truth. Vanity.
Vanity.
Totally vanity.
We are vain here. We are vain. Yes,
Very
it's
vain.
fine to be vain. Yes.
I always say this is all fake, but the heart is real.
Yeah.
We were on vacation in Europe, and I just woke up one day and I looked in the mirror. I'm like, I'm spending way too much time in this mirror right now, just trying to look like a human. Like, what is going on with my face? I'm like so puffy, and we were going to see friends like a week later that I hadn't seen in a year. And I said to my husband, I'm like, okay, we're not drinking for like a week. And I know that sounds like, well, we were in Europe. Like we were
in
drinking,
Europe
every
no
day,
less. Yeah.
We're like champagne with every dinner, wine with lunch. And so I'm like, we're not drinking for a week so that I can get rid of it, like flush out this face. And on day 3, I was like, why is this so hard? What? Oh my God. I'd never done like a dry January or anything like that. I'm like, oh, why is this the only thing I'm thinking about? I need to just understand what's going on with me. So I just kind of dug in to figure out like, okay, what is my relationship? Why is this something I feel like I'm missing right now? Why is this hard? And just started examining it, and initially just for vanity's sake. And, a week turned into 10 days, turned into a month, 3 months. And now we're coming up on, I don't know, like 9 months or something. And the more I learned, it's just like anything. The more I learned, I'm like, I can't believe no one told me this. Like truthfully, my doctors knew. The thing I was working on was my inflammatory markers. They knew all these things, and no one ever said, hey, you should probably cut the alcohol. No. Well, Dr. Amen always says it, but I was like, la, 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 la. Like not, but my, doctors I treat with all the time, no one ever said that.
Yeah. And I think it's almost more awkward when you go out and you don't order. Like my husband and I went out for, just dinner with like neighbors, and we went for, nice restaurant, and everyone's like, and the waitress comes like, what would you guys like to order to drink? And we're like, we would like some water with lemon.
Yeah. Well, here's my go-to. I always say my drink is so complicated. Is it okay if I go up and order at the bar? Because I do have a very specific mocktail that I like. And then no one ever asks because it is a very complicated mocktail.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you want to share what it is? Do you want to share the mocktail?
Yeah, I do a non-alcoholic ginger beer if it's available. Mm-hmm. And then I like a muddled jalapeno and, just a splash of, maybe some lime juice. If they've got tahini, that makes me happy. But just something that's like really grabs you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I loved the bite of champagne. Like I used to love the bite of a Diet Coke. And then I learned about, oh, wait a second. I could be getting cancer from Diet Coke. Okay. But I need a new bite. And so then this is my evolution. I was like, I'll do Diet Sprite. Like, how is that better? I don't know. But it looked more like water. So I'm like, it looks more like water. It's got to be better. So then I started mixing Diet Sprite and sparkling water. And then eventually I went to all sparkling water. And that's got a good bite if you got the right, sparkling water. But man, that the bite of the champagne at dinner, that's what I missed. And I'm like, I just need to replace the bite. So that's what it is for me.
That's really cool. I like that because I feel like it's almost socially more awkward to not order something. Because our neighbors were like, you're really not going to have any wine with dinner? I'm like, yeah, really. Because it just, in no world do I feel my sleep gets trashed for days. So I used to be able to have a drink and then, you fall into some sort of like unconscious state or whatever and you get on with it. But, I'm 47 now. Like it just doesn't work for me. When I drink, I have terrible sleep for 3 days. So I just don't do it. And we used to even say, oh, well, we just drink at Christmas and Thanksgiving. Those are the only times we'll open up a really nice bottle of wine. So we kind of make it worth it because it's only once or twice a year. But even then, it's not worth it. I'd rather have an extra piece of cheesecake.
Yes, I haven't yet had a drink, but I'm not saying that I'm never going to drink again. I'll never be a drinker, but will I have a drink again? I don't. If there's a circumstance where I'm like, okay, this would be better with it, I might.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing is we have to look at this as differently than like I'm on the wagon, I'm off the wagon kind of thing. It's the only thing that we are that way with, right? Like anything else, it's like, oh, if you get some exercise, that's good. That's better than getting none. You know what I mean? But alcohol is weird how we perceive it. All I know is that the Gen Zs have figured it out. Like they're not drinking. They're like, wait a second, y'all are so unhealthy. We're not going to do all the things you're doing. We're going to focus on, I don't know, experiences.
And I appreciate what you're saying because I think that we can tamper it down, right? So I remember working with a client many years ago now, and she was drinking, I think it was 9 sodas a day. She was having like 9, like it was like it was almost like a pack of sodas a day, Diet Cokes or whatever. And it wasn't like, okay, we're just going to get to like, this is terrible. I can't believe you're doing this. It was like, all right, well, can you go from 9 to 8? Can you just have 8 next week? And she was like, yeah, I could totally do that.
Yeah.
And that's how we, tailored her or like, brought her down, tapered her off of it. She ended up kind of settling around 4. She was like, 4 works. Like 4 is great for me. I don't want any more. I don't want any less. And for me, that was a win because she's consuming less than 50% of what she was before. And, we were able to move some other things for her as well with her care. But sometimes it's not, I just appreciate the nuance. It's like, it's not all or nothing, and I had a glass of champagne on my wedding day with my husband. I didn't drink the whole thing, but we did do the little arm thing where you bring the arms, I don't know what we did. We twisted our arms together and drank it or whatever. But I'm not someone who enjoys, maybe my bite is, I have more of for me, which is why I love protein. It just dampens the food noise for me. I have no noise with alcohol. I don't like the taste. It doesn't, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
But for me, like I can have, if you give me 1 slice of cheesecake, I'll have 2.
Oh, see, I was that way with champagne. If you give me 1 glass, I'd like the whole bottle. I mean, I got there. Like we didn't ever used to drink. And here's the thing with alcohol is we are all predisposed because of the way it's formulated to reach a tolerance level and to want more. And then you just don't feel it anymore. Like there was a time where I would have 1 glass of champagne and I would be like buzzed. And then there was a time when we were in Europe where I could drink 3 glasses and be like, I feel nothing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think we're all different. And I think we have to allow for a different way of doing things. Some people are all or nothing. Some people do like to titrate down. And we have to trust our intuition, no matter what that's with, whether it's picking up zone 2 walking or strength training or changing the way that you approach your supplements, HRT, there is no one size fits all, but it is helpful to have somebody else's kind of template to say, well, look, I'll start with this, but I'm also going to give myself permission to say, like, if this doesn't feel right, or if it's not working, I'm going to troubleshoot it for myself. I'm going to figure out what works for me.
Yeah. And I think that that's why examples are so helpful. I think that, case studies and conversations like this are so helpful because you can say, okay, Chalene's example, I'm not going to do 100% of, but maybe I can try. Maybe I really know the problem here is alcohol. So maybe instead of having the 3, and I think that this happened a lot in COVID too, where people would have a glass or 2, and then all of a sudden it was 3 or 4, and then it was the entire bottle. And, we have different coping mechanisms. So I love that you're saying that. I want to transition, if I can, to supplements. You mentioned it, so I was like, all right, let's go there. Supplements that you evolved or love for women in perimenopause and menopause, and why?
I used to believe that supplements were just a crock. It was this kind of ongoing battle I had with the company I partnered with because they always wanted me to, part of the partnership, most of the other trainers, they had to promote their supplement lines. And I just wouldn't. I'm like, the body doesn't need them. I just was like, didn't want to hear it. I thought it was just a money grab. So I never took supplements until I understood from having, great guests on my show, learning more about our gut permeability as we go through menopause and perimenopause, and how much our hormones help to regulate the way that we use nutrients, and how we become deficient in almost everything when our hormones decline. And so I'm like, okay, this makes, all I need to see was the research, And so I think the most basic ones are important. I think most women are well served if they're doing, especially of a certain age, if they're doing a vitamin D, a quality vitamin D, an omega, creatine, obviously so important. It's for brain health, for muscle development, all those things. Great research on that. It's really well researched. I also believe magnesium, oh my gosh, responsible for over 300 different hormonal reactions in our bodies. And then there's the ones that I take that I try not to even talk about them because I don't want her thinking she needs to do them. Like, it's kind of like, it's the icing on top. Sometimes there are supplements that I'll take that I'm really been using off label because they may help me to age powerfully, but they're not necessary. They're not medically necessary. And so I think it's really important that women, they start with those basics because they want to say things like, well, should I be doing I heard you talking about peptides. And I'm like, cool, but like, how's your vitamin D?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I tend to be a supplement minimalist myself. I love the list that you gave. They're the ones that I typically recommend the most as well. Creatine monohydrate, as you said, vitamin D, D3 with K2,
yeah,
magnesium, all sorts.
The Bs.
The B vitamins, they're great as well. I also love, and this is like, now, once you're taking all of those, the subcategory might be something like urolithin A. That's something that I'm really, really excited about. I don't know if you've read anything or heard about it, but it's really...
Spell that for us.
Yeah, oh God,
EU?
Test my spelling. No, you are.
Oh,
let
me
write it out. Let me
okay,
see.
I know, right?
UROLITHIN and then the letter A.
Okay.
Urolithin A. I'll send you some.
You are.
You are lithin A.
No,
yeah.
See, you called me anyways.
No, you are. It's an interesting compound because it seems to be, again, so it's a postbiotic. So again, just to your point around like our gut integrity, the epithelial lining degrades in perimenopause, even just things like the normal protein that we're consuming. It's like not what you eat, it's what you can actually absorb, right?
Yeah.
So this postbiotic seems to help with absorption. It seems to help with recovery. Yeah, so it's a very cool compound. It seems to also help in muscle protein synthesis, which is kind of cool too. So there's all these different emerging science, but people will say, "Oh, so should I be?" A lot of the companies, like the supplement companies, because it's a new product or like the science is very new. Like the pricing can be a little elevated for many budgets, but I would say, to your point, the magnesium, you got the vitamin D, you got the omega-3s, you have the creatine, protein powder, I'd even throw in there as well. That's like a food group in my house. I would say those. And then you can start experimenting with some of the other, other less mainstream ones. Like, the peptides, like you were saying, and urolithin A and postbiotics and fun stuff like that.
Yeah. It's interesting, to just be completely honest about this. I was having a conversation with my doctor. He's a psychiatrist and a medical doctor. He's kind of has like a very whole person approach. He also monitors the hormones. But he was saying to me, I'd run out of one of the supplements. He goes, "So how'd you feel?" And I'm like, I don't know. I guess the same. And he's like, "Okay, and how'd you feel once we put it back in?" I'm like, I don't know. I guess the same. I think that one of the problems for women, one of our challenges, is that we have been so conditioned to not even notice how we feel. Yeah. So a lot of times, like, when women's hormones are off, like, they don't even know it because it's like, oh, you've got walking pneumonia. Good. Get up, get the kids ready, out the door. Your husband's like, I think I'm getting a cold, and he's out on the couch and,
right.
calling 911. And we're like, yeah, here I am to save the world. So you get in your doctor's office and I just remember when my doctor was asking me about symptoms related to perimenopause, I'm like, I don't have any. But I didn't realize until I was better how many I did have because they were so inconsistent, So I think you have to track them, like put them on your phone, because a lot of times when you're in perimenopause, you may only have a symptom for a couple of days or a week because your hormones are in flux. And so you think, okay, that was just a weird anomaly. And you forget that it's happened every month. Every month for like 3 or 4 days, when you sneeze, you pee your pants. But it's not all the time. It's like there's these little things. And if you track them, you're going to be much much more prepared to work with your doctor. Obviously labs too, but symptoms and labs, I think together really do help to show us the picture that sometimes we've been conditioned to ignore.
God, that is so good. I could not, like, if I could highlight that, I would. That's so good. Because you're right. Like, I think it's very difficult for us to quantify mental health changes, like personality changes, like not, making plans with the girls, but then as the date sort of gets closer and closer, you're like, oh man, like, I don't know if I want to get, I gotta get dressed, I gotta find an outfit, and all that. And then the pelvic health, like that is something that I don't think many women. I just had a pelvic health therapist we recorded last week, and she was talking about what you were just saying. Like, I sneeze or I can't go to a trampoline park anymore. I can't run after my kids. Or as soon as my key, like you put the key in the door and you're like, oh my God, I go to the bathroom right away. Like that urgent confidence.
Yeah.
We're not even taught. There's no discourse in school or any type of formal education unless you're a physical therapist or a chiropractor, or maybe even I would maybe assume maybe a massage therapist, to understand anything about the pelvic floor.
Yeah.
And there's so much shame. There's so much shame around urinary incontinence, the urge incontinence, the stress incontinence that we were just talking about, and how that actually is a progressive problem in perimenopause and menopause. Like, we don't talk about it. And it's the physio that I was talking to, she was like, that is one of the biggest predictors of whether or not you're going to end up in a nursing home is incontinence, urinary incontinence. We were also talking about fecal incontinence as well as a sort of later stage sign. But it's like, if you, every time, like, you walk in the house and you have to go to the bathroom, or you have, water running and, you're washing your hands or something and you have to go to the bathroom, this is a sign that maybe your pelvic floor is not exactly where it should be.
And many of the hormones that so many of the symptoms that we experience in perimenopause and menopause, they're not overnight. You're not like, you don't just wake up one day and you're like, oh my gosh, this changed. It's so gradual and so subtle that we wrap them into our personality. Like you said, I don't feel like going out with my friends. You know what? We say things like, as I'm aging, I guess I'm becoming more introverted. I guess as I'm aging, maybe I'm just not that into my husband anymore. Like we assume it's just like, oh, it's happened so gradual that we don't realize, like, no, girl, if we get your hormones right, you're going to think he's hot again. And you are going to miss it. Right now you don't, because it's been so gradual. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, let's talk about sex for a second. Like, a lot of women my age are not interested in sex. Why would they be? Their vaginal lining has become thinner, so it's painful. And they are experiencing all this like body dysmorphia. You're like, I've got like a 3-inch black hair on my chin, and I'm carrying around extra.
That showed up overnight. It wasn't there yesterday.
How did this happen? How come no one told me?
And now I have a billy goat. Yeah. Okay. Go on. Yeah.
And you're just like, I'm not feeling cute, and it sounds painful, and so no, I'm good. And guess what? His hormones are in decline too, and so once you start to get things back in check, you're like, oh, okay. So actually, I didn't realize I was having these symptoms, because they come on gradually and they're inconsistent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, to your point with the if you're not feeling, and you don't have to feel like, okay, this is like my best spot. But if you're like, hey, my waist has disappeared, I have that extra 8 pounds and I feel inflamed and I feel tired. Like, the last thing you want is to be the most vulnerable, in a sexual encounter with, your partner, whoever, husband or otherwise. And I think men get so much counseling on vitality and preserving sexual function as they're aging. Like, there's so many products on the market that serve that, right? So we have TRT, which as of this recording, there's still no products available in the United States and Canada for women. We are still using products that are designed for men, just dosing at like a 10th or a 20th of that dose. I know Australia has a product, but Canada and the US currently do not. They get a lot of counseling. They get TRT, they get testosterone replacement therapy. They have medications for ED, right? For erectile dysfunction. So we have this like super, and then there's a lot of discussion around it with their physicians, right? So they get this counseling, they have medications. So they have like this really happy penis, right? And a very unhappy vagina, sometimes. So it's like, why aren't we talking about, sure, like make the penis super happy, but why can't we also make the vagina really happy as well? Like, why do we have that mismatch? Right. And there's so many, I think it was Mary Claire who was, I think she did, it was like a menopause cruise or something. And it was her and like, the whole menopause, right? So Vonda was there and, Corinne and all the people. And there was a lawyer that was on the cruise. And I think it was, I want to say it was Mary Claire who told me. I forget who it was that told me. It was one of the ladies. And she was saying that she was a divorce lawyer. And she went on this cruise and she was like, if more women knew about vaginal estrogen and hormone replacement therapy, I wonder how many less divorces there would be in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we have this really big mismatch in libido and sexual drive and connection. And for women, like you're saying, sometimes they just don't feel like it. Or maybe they really love their partner, right? But they're like, God, this kills. It hurts so much. Like I just can't endure this pain because the lining, as you were saying, gets really thin and all that. And it's a really painful situation. Like to have, like, you finally have the kids out of the house and you're like ready to party, right? We don't have to lock the doors anymore. And like it hurts and you don't want to do it. Like that's also completely demoralizing and it's awful.
And it's such a beautiful thing that, it's one of the things, again, you just don't realize you miss it until you realize that you did. I saw a clip with Rosie O'Donnell talking to Theo Von, and she was talking about how she had sex with her husband, and he was asking her about her sex life, and she was like, oh, no, I don't have sex anymore. And he's like, really? She's like, no, because I didn't do anything to take care of my hormones, and I was fully menopausal, and we had sex. And I ended up in the ER, and it was the most painful experience of my life.
My God.
And I ended up getting UTI after UTI. And she's like, so it's just not worth it. I'm like, what a shame that so many women in her age range, and perhaps a little older, missed the mark because they had been misled by, poor science, the Women's Health Initiative. And even my mom goes, she said to me, my doctor said that I might have long haul menopause. I'm like, Mom.
Like we all do. Once you have it,
I'm like, that's the cutest thing I've ever heard.
Once you're in menopause, you're always there.
She's like, do you think that could be possible? I'm like, well, you're so cute. Right? Yeah.
So cute. But that breaks my heart. And I'm sure you've had Kelly Casperson on the show.
Yeah.
She was talking, she literally scared the bejesus out of me. What did she say? 80% of women, or I think it's higher, but it's just 80% of reported women have clitoral atrophy.
I know. Yes.
I was like, that is the cruelest thing that you can ever say. Like, that's awful.
Yeah.
That's awful. And so, like you're saying, it's subtle, right? It's like the orgasms become it's just harder to climax. It's just, you don't have the desire, the libido is not there the way it was. It's all this like just small little whispers over time that sort of start to become this big scream.
Yes.
Like Rosie O'Donnell saying, I ended up in the ER. I get UTIs and UTIs and UTIs.
I'm done.
Like, yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah.
So I do hope that women will understand, if I could leave people with one message, that it's okay to go to your doctor with a list of well-informed questions and to ask the right questions. It's okay to ask for a second opinion. It is okay to ask what type of training your physician has. And if you're uncomfortable doing that, because I would be, and I'm pretty outspoken, I would email the front desk. You know what? Who cares if they're offended? Like, I just need to know whose hands am I in, because I want the best information. And now with tools like Perplexity and AI, the average person has access to research, and you don't even have to understand how to read it. These tools allow us to have information that we've never had access to before. And so it really does help us to be in the driver's seat when it comes to our hormones. No hormone replacement therapy is not like it didn't fix it. I didn't lose weight with it, but it levels the playing field, A, and B, it's protective. It protects my brain. It protects my heart. It protects my bones. It protects my muscles. I want to live longer. I want to age powerfully. I don't want my kids changing my diapers. I don't want somebody to have to help me up off of the couch when I'm 70 years old. I want to be sitting on the floor cross-legged and be able to stand up without using my hands. These are the things that I want. In order to do that, I deserve to have the things that make me operate at optimal levels. And that means my hormones get to be at optimal levels.
Yeah. Amen. I couldn't have said that better myself. I think we just deserve to age to age powerfully, as you were saying, and to age in the best way possible. And that often includes hormones. And there's some women that are going to listen like, I don't want to do that. It's like, no problem. You're like, you do you. And I love that for you. And we don't want to deny women who are suffering the option to have that conversation with their physicians. So
and also just understand how they work. Like, there's so many ways that you can elevate for example, testosterone naturally, by strength training and doing heavy strength training. And, there are things that we can do to help improve our state. But ultimately, it makes a big difference for our longevity.
Last question. One thing I loved at Vonda's is you called menopause the after party. And you're like, everyone wants to go to the after party. What are some of the benefits that you have experienced in menopause? I know that we spend a lot of time talking about these are the things, and this is the, clitoral atrophy. And, we talk about a lot of that. But I think that there's also something really, it's like a second spring. There's something, at least I'm hopeful for when I get invited to the after party. So tell me.
My list is so long, and I want women, I think we have to change the narrative, because there are so many things to look forward to. First of all, I don't have to send my husband out to buy me tampons or pads, and I can wear white whenever I want to, and I can be IDGAF about everything. You come at me, I'm like, I'm older than you.
Like, bitch, please.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I love that. I love that people will say things like, I want to be you when I grow up. I'm like, why? I'm just the same person I was 5 years ago. It's just so easy to it's so easy to stand out once you're in the after party, because everyone else has been told to stand down, And so I love being an example of someone who's still dancing on tables, and I don't need champagne to do it, but I still dance on tables, and I wear inappropriately short dresses, and I love the relationship I have with my husband. It's never been hotter. And I don't know if that's just the freedom of knowing I can't get pregnant, but it's just, there's so many great things. You're wiser, you have more money, you have better taste in most cases, you have fewer responsibilities. I don't have any kids. You know what I mean? I have kids, but they're gone. It's just this crazy time where you're so much smarter, and you've got all this wisdom, and you just don't worry as much. I don't know what it is. You just don't worry as much about what people think. You're like, oh, well.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to get to the after party. And I just have to say, this is maybe one of the reasons why I wanted you on the show, because you are so unapologetically you, and it is so admirable. I love it. I was consuming some of your YouTube stuff, and I was like, I love this. I love that she's talking about hair extensions and creams to help with your wrinkles and all this. I was like, this is the best friend. This is everybody's best friend. That's sort of the vibe that I get from you. So thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom, all the things that you've learned from the podcast, and of course your own life experience. Tell people where they can find you. Link to the show, link to the YouTube, all the places where we can find you.
Well, definitely the YouTube. It's the podcast is on YouTube, and it's called The Chalene Show. I'd love to have you listen to The Chalene Show. And then I'm probably the most active on Instagram, which is at Chalene Johnson. But thank you so much for having me, because you are such a phenomenal interviewer. I love watching the interviews you've had on the show, and there's something about the way you deliver the content that doesn't overwhelm. It's plain English. That's what people want. They don't need us to go over their heads. It's just tell me the facts. And you do such a great job of pulling that out of your guests. So thank you for the honor to be on your show.
Oh, Chalene, thank you so much. The honor and pleasure has been all mine. Thank you. Isn't she delightful? I enjoyed every minute of that conversation. She has this really awesome knack of just nailing how I have felt in the past, and I bet probably how you have felt in the past. She has a really good way of articulating experience, a common experience, and just love that. So many good nuggets in this conversation. I think that so many of them. The one that I really loved was just the whole diet and fitness culture. It's if you don't have this one proprietary shake or program, and you don't follow it 100%, you're the problem. How many times have you fell off a program that wasn't designed for a woman, or it was so intense that you could never follow it through, but because you weren't able to do it, you blamed yourself. I just really thought that was such a poignant moment. And then the other thing I loved, the other big takeaway for me was make the one thing, the one thing, the one thing. It's what's the, maybe it's the HRT, and it's the weights, and it's the cardio, and it's the diet, and it's the boundaries, and it's the sleep, and it's the this, and it's the that. Why don't we just do one of those? Why don't we just take a really nice, long, luxurious runway, figure out one of them, and make the one that you're going to start first, the one that's going to really make a big bang for your buck, to sort of expand your capacity. I just loved that. And she is just someone that I admire so much. I mean, she's such a, obviously so much fame in the fitness industry, but just the brilliant entrepreneurial mind that she has and the way that she's continued to stay current and to reinvent herself and not just be a fitness person who sells her body, right? It's like she is able to articulate a variety of subjects and really just help women who are just like her and just like me. So just loved the show. I would love to know what you thought of my conversation with Chalene. Leave a comment if you will, if you feel like it's helping you, this podcast on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, and we'll catch you next time.